What is capital punishment? Capital punishment is punishment by death for a crime, or other known as the death penalty. It is used in over 60 countries and 35 U.S. states, plus the federal government and the military too. It was used in ancient times for various punishment offenses. Even the Bible believes in the death penalty for murder and other crimes like kidnapping and witchcraft. Minnesota does not have capital punishment hasn't had capital punishment since 1911. And that is just one more reason why I'm proud to be a Minnesotan. Capital punishment is considered to be a cruel and unusual punishment. It can take the lives of innocent people, and it can affect lots of people in different ways. Michigan was the first state to get rid of their death penalty in 1846. Perhaps it was in response to their neighbor Canada, which also does not have a death penalty. Next, Wisconsin was the second state to get rid of its death penalty in 1853. Wisconsin had only executed one person, a farmer, who drowned his wife. His hanging became a public spectacle and may have led to the end of public death. Ever since these states have started eliminating the death penalty, it has been a trickle effect, and lots more governments, state governments, and the national government have been looking into it a lot more. In 2010, according to the Death Penalty Information Center, there was 3,260 people on death row, and of that 3,260 people, 61 of them were women. Typically speaking, when a person is on death row, they are waiting on average to 14 to 16 years before being executed. And with holding people from their death, it costs lots of money and it adds up. The states with the biggest death row are California, 695, Florida, 400, and Texas with 335. New Hampshire and Wyoming only have one person on death row currently. Just about every year, Texas tops the list of the state with the most state executions, with 17 in 2010, which is twice as many as Ohio, with 8 executions. In 2010, 4 states with a death penalty law did not execute anyone, and it was Indiana, Missouri, South Carolina, and Tennessee. The racial mix-up in 2009 was about 55% of the prisoners were white, and the other 40% were black, and about 5% were listed as unknown or other. Common viewpoints for the death penalty consist of deter crimes. Is the death penalty considered a deter crime? I don't know. It's very controversial. The death penalty can also give closures to families and the victims of families. When someone gets put in the death penalty and starts in their death row, families start to feel better and more safe now that the one who killed someone that was close to them is now being killed too. Support for life imprisonment without the protect of parole has been growing. If there's a person being convicted is left in jail, they are guilty, they're going to be in jail longer to suffer. That's another reason why I think there should be no death penalty. Because when you sit in jail, you're rotting away, but when you actually get killed by the death penalty, then you're just getting the easy way out. The crime rates have not gone down. In fact, the murder rate in 2006 is 6 times and is 5 times in Australia. Neither country has death penalty. Texas has twice the number of murder rates in Wisconsin, and Texas has a death penalty and Wisconsin doesn't. A state that doesn't have the death penalty, like Texas and Oklahoma, have historically executed the most number of death row inmates, yet in 2003, their state murder rates increased, and both murder rates are higher than the national average. The death penalty violates human rights laws and religions. Arguments against the death penalty are from Catholic, Presbyterian, Quaker, and Amish people. Do not allow the death penalty in their religion. Cruel and unusual punishment. Methods of execution in 2010 were lethal injection, was used in all but 2 executions, and 1 death in Virginia was by electrocution. 1 death in Utah was by a firing squad, which seems unusual, but they actually preferred it because they wanted to die in a gruesome way. Methods of execution worldwide are lethal injection in the U.S. and China, public beheading in Saudi Arabia, fire squatting in Iran, the U.S., and other countries, hanging in Singapore and other countries, and stoning in Afghanistan and other countries. And the U.S. also uses the electric chair. Singapore is known to have the most out-of-control death penalty problems because of their bad problem with selling drugs. One thing that's bad about the death penalty is that there's a possibility that you're executing innocent people and convicting people for wrongful convictions. The innocent are always wrongly convicted. Since the death penalty was reinstated in 1976, 82 inmates have been freed from the death row. That's 1 death row inmate found to be wrongly convicted for every 7 executed. Also, the death penalty is very expensive. Executions cost more than a life in prison. $2 million per person versus $500,000. That's almost 4 times as much. Free counsel for defense for appeals and maximum security in separate death row wing. The governor of Massachusetts noted that 56 people have been sentenced to the death in his state since 1978. The taxpayers have spent about $22.4 million beyond on the cost of imprisoning and dealing with the death penalty. Some facts about the death penalty. Only 2% of those who are eligible for a death sentence actually receive death. 95% of death row prisoners cannot afford an attorney, must be taken to a court-appointed attorney, who often are overworked, underpaid, and lack an experience. Since 1973, 124 people have been released from the death row because they were wrongfully convicted. The murder rate for states with the death penalty was 46% higher than states without the death penalty, which was set in 2005. About once a week, a convicted murderer is put into the death penalty state. In conclusion, the death penalty not only costs taxpayers money, but it could be costing people their life and innocence. People who are sentenced to a life in prison without parole will actually be suffering more. Now I'd like to leave you with a quote on why the death penalty is so awful and why it can ruin lives of innocent people and their families. To take a life when a life has been lost is revenge, not justice, said Desmond Tutu. Thank you.